Hello again, everyone. Welcome to Washington Gun Law TV. I am Washington Gun Law President William Kirk. Thanks for joining us. Hey, you know, for the people out here in the People's Republic of Washington who think we're suffering, something that my dad used to say all the time, and we just laid my dad to rest last week, is, son, anytime you think you got it bad, you don't have to look too far to find someone who's got it way worse than you. And what I've always told the folks in Washington State is, hey, yeah, we got it pretty bad here, but hey, you got to see what's happening in Illinois. Well, we're going to talk about Illinois again, and it seems like every time I talk about Illinois, I have to talk about how I candidly think that the state government there just hates, absolutely despises its own citizens. And I also got to say that because of this channel and some of the connections that I've been able to make in Illinois, I don't understand what the beef is, because everyone I've met out of Illinois seems to be pretty damn cool. We're going to talk about your FOID card again, because really when you think about it, having to have a hall pass, a permission slip to exercise what is supposed to be an inalienable right is offensive enough already, but when you add some complexity of some case law that everyone seems to be struggling with, well, it gets even more sinister than that, doesn't it? So today, let's spend a few minutes and let's talk about proof that the Illinois FOID card is the biggest sham ever. You watch the news, you read the headlines, and you know it for yourself. Your community is less safe than it was just a few years ago. So you decided to purchase your first firearm. But like everything else in your life, you wanted to do this lawfully and responsibly. So you trained, and trained, and trained. You learned the laws of self-defense and all the tactics necessary to protect yourself and your family. To this day, you continue to train, and you now live by the motto that it's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. You are prepared for anything, or so you thought. Who are you going to call when it all hits the fan? Who's going to defend you for defending them? Who's going to stand in your corner when you realize that proof beyond a reasonable doubt means one thing in a high school civics class and something altogether different in the real world? Introducing Right to Bear, self-defense coverage that protects you so that you can protect them. With an attorney-answered hotline, you will always get a confidential conversation with your state's attorney. There are no cap limits for either criminal or civil defense. All forms of self-defense are covered, so from a fist to a firearm, you are protected. And you will have some of the nation's most passionate 2A attorneys defending you. And the peace of mind that you will have knowing that Right to Bear is in your corner, well, that's priceless. Listen, I've been in this industry long enough to know two things with absolute certainty. Good lawyers aren't cheap, and cheap lawyers aren't good. So visit my friends today at protectwithbear.com, and if you use the promo code WGL, you will receive 10% off. Listen, you need to protect yourself so that you can protect them. Visit my good friends at protectwithbear.com. Okay, here's what we're talking about today, Illinois. We're talking about two things related to your state. One is your FOID card. You know, that permission slip that you need to go get before you can exercise an inalienable right. You know, the background check that you need to go through before you go through a background check. Now, as offensive as that may seem, I'm going to add an extra layer of offensiveness and complexity to this, because we're also going to talk about the case of United States v. Carbajal Flores. Now, that is a case that recently struck down 18 United States Code Section 922 G5, which makes it unlawful for illegal aliens to be in possession of a firearm. What makes it even more troubling than that? Where did that case originate from? Oh, that's right, it originated from the state of Illinois. So, I'm just going to assume, for the sake of argument here, that since Mr. Carbajal Flores was an illegal immigrant, an undocumented alien, a newcomer, whatever euphemism you want to use, he wasn't here lawfully, that he probably, in all likelihood, was ineligible to get a FOID card and was not in possession of a FOID card. However, when I went back and I looked at all of the things that Mr. Carbajal Flores had been accused of, I didn't really see that. So, just to be clear here, there is now a plaintiff in a suit that has come out of the United States District Court in Illinois that has found that an illegal immigrant has a constitutional right to be in possession of a firearm. That same individual presumably was not in possession of a FOID card, and no charges were brought against this individual, to the best of our knowledge, by the state of Illinois. Now, When you read the opinion, Carbajal v. Flores, which we talked about in this case right here, they really kind of skim over the facts. So, what exactly did Mr. Carbajal Flores do? And so I really decided, well, how egregious was, in fact, his activity? So I decided to look into it a little bit further, and guess what? We found the probable cause affidavits and things like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a summary, and we'll link it all up down below so that you can fact check me here of what Mr. Carbajal Flores was accused of to land himself with this federal indictment, which was then overturned by a United States District Court judge in the state of Illinois. In a nutshell, the events took place on June 1st of 2020 in our summer of love, and apparently Chicago was experiencing that same old love fest that we were out here in Seattle. There was all sorts of protests, there was all sorts of violence, there was all sorts of vandalism, there was all sorts of crime running rampant throughout the city, and no matter what the police tried to do, candidly, they were completely outnumbered, outmanned, and underfunded. This, of course, led to many people taking matters into their own hand, and Mr. Carbajal Flores decided then to join a group of other neighbors and basically establish a street patrol to protect the property of individuals. Now, this was in Chicago's Little Village neighborhood, and so things were pretty volatile there, and there were several near incidents of violence which took place that night. However, at one point later in the evening, Mr. Carbajal Flores was handed a firearm by another individual, so he took possession of that firearm that night, okay, without any background checks or transfer. I'm sure, Illinois, you got all sorts of hoops to jump through, but somebody just said, hey, you better hang on to this tonight, okay? Later on then that night, a car swerved kind of in Mr. Carbajal Flores' direction. It never did strike him, but then Mr. Carbajal Flores did what any reasonable person would not do, actually, and that is, of course, he fired 7 rounds in the direction of that car. That's right, he fired 7 rounds in the direction of the car that had mildly veered in his direction. Later on, when cars returned, Mr. Carbajal Flores again attempted to fire upon him. This time the firearm malfunctioned. Maybe it was out of ammunition, I don't really know. But ultimately, he was arrested that night and then indicted under federal law for a violation of 18 U.S.C. 922 G5, being an illegal alien in possession of a firearm. However, those charges, as you now know, have been thrown out because a court has found that 18 U.S.C. 922 G5, as applied to Mr. Carbajal Flores, is unconstitutional in its application. Now, here's the thing, Illinois. This has been a ruling that I think a lot of people have struggled with. Normally, we loudly applaud whenever there's been an advancement of Second Amendment rights. But many who are normally favoring the advancement of Second Amendment rights are struggling with this issue, and I understand why. I, too, am struggling with this issue. I watched a video the other day from Eric, better known as Iraq Veteran 8888. I really admire his insight. I think he's a sharp dude. I think he really thinks things through before he opens his mouth. And he, too, you can just see in the video, he was struggling with whether or not this is a good ruling or not. But Illinois, this is what I want you to be aware of. You see, every one of you who want to be a lawful and responsible gun owner out there, any one of you who are, lawfully in this country and you're lawfully living in the state of Illinois and you just want to exercise your right of self-preservation, you see, you can only do so if you get government's permission, if you go out and get a FOID card. Mr. Carbajal Flores here was not even eligible to get a FOID card, and therefore his possession of a firearm was also unlawful under state law. But is there any mention of Mr. Carbajal Flores at all ever being prosecuted under Illinois law? Not only was he in possession of a firearm, but candidly, he absolutely, positively misused that firearm. And had the firearm functioned better or had more ammunition, he candidly would have shot off a lot more rounds that night, none of which were probably lawfully justified, all of which endangered everybody else in that community. And so right now, Illinois, you live in a state where you have to jump through hoops. You have to get the blessings of your state government before you can go possess a firearm. But if you are somebody like Mr. Carbajal Flores, hey, no problem. Proof once again that the FOID card system in the state of Illinois is one of the biggest shams ever perpetrated on any American citizen, and further proof that the state of Illinois really does hate its citizens. And hey, by the way, I want to thank one of our loyal viewers, Gene M, out there in the People's Republic of Illinois, for giving us the idea for this video. Gene, thank you so much for all your support of this channel. If you guys got any other questions about this or anything else related to what's left of our Second Amendment rights, you should know how to get a hold of Washington gun law by now. If you don't, that's okay. That information is down there in the description box. And then finally, let's everybody remember that part of being the lawful and responsible gun owner, like we talk about all the time here, is to know what the law is in every situation, how it applies to you in any instance that you may find yourself. Until next time, thanks for watching. Stay safe.